arrests for individuals involved. I will be pressing charges.
The home that she leased to Mayor Tiffany Henyard has filed eviction papers. She says Henyard has not.
The city of Dalton is plunging deeper into chaos as controversies, accusations of financial mismanagement, and relentless political infighting have turned township meetings into dramatic spectacles akin to reality TV. At the center of this turmoil is Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor, whose leadership style has drawn widespread criticism. As both the mayor of Dalton and supervisor of the township, Henyard has become a polarizing figure, accused of fostering division and dysfunction while prioritizing her public image over the community's pressing needs. Under her administration, Dalton faces mounting economic deficits, allegations of personal financial mismanagement, and organizational breakdowns that hinder governance. Critics point to extravagant spending, including claims of taxpayer dollars funding luxury accommodations, fine dining, and cosmetic services as evidence of self-serving tendencies. This behavior has sparked outrage, especially given Dalton's dire fiscal situation, where the average median income is significantly below the national average. Despite the scandals, Henyard has refused to step aside, casting herself as a fearless leader battling political adversaries. However, her defiance is often perceived as reckless, alienating the community she claims to serve. Township meetings have become battlegrounds, with trustees openly clashing with her leadership, accusing her of being condescending, belligerent, and disconnected from the struggles of residents. Her penchant for theatricality, symbolized by her golden microphone, only reinforces her detachment from reality. Henyard's tenure has also been marred by legal and ethical controversies, including allegations of misusing public resources. Reports suggest township funds were directed toward questionable expenditures, and township vehicles were allegedly used for personal or political purposes, leading to instances of mismanagement. Adding to her troubles, a landlord recently filed an eviction lawsuit against Henyard, claiming unpaid rent and illegal actions, further mirroring accusations of financial irresponsibility. Among her most controversial projects is a multi-million-dollar skating rink, widely criticized as a vanity endeavor that prioritizes her public profile over the community's needs. This project, coupled with rumors of lavish, poorly attended events funded by taxpayer money, underscores her administration's misplaced priorities. Investigations have revealed questionable financial practices, including a $40,000 online shopping spree, intensifying scrutiny of her leadership. Dalton's financial woes have reached critical levels, with the township's general fund reportedly plummeting from over $1 million to a significant deficit under Henyard's watch. Federal investigators are now probing allegations of embezzlement and corruption, adding further strain to her embattled leadership. Henyard's proposal to return property taxes to residents has been dismissed as a reckless vote-buying scheme that fails to address the town's broader economic issues. Public dissatisfaction is at an all-time high, with residents voicing their frustration in symbolic protests during town meetings. Staff. Even Henyard's most ardent supporters are beginning to distance themselves as her administration becomes increasingly isolated. Her narrative of resilience in the face of adversity rings hollow for many, who see her actions as self-preservation rather than genuine leadership. As Dalton struggles with the fallout of Henyard's controversial tenure, her future remains uncertain. With ongoing federal investigations and growing public outrage, her administration has become a lightning rod for frustration in a town already grappling with economic challenges and a fractured political landscape.
It was going to be a little messy, but it's just something we felt important that had to be done, that should be done.
He entered the room expecting a routine municipal supervisor meeting in Thornton Township, something predictable, focused on local issues and community updates. Instead, he was met with a scene that could only be described as a live-action catastrophe, more fitting for a reality show than a township meeting. At the heart of the chaos was Tiffany Henyard, the embattled township supervisor. What was meant to be a standard meeting spiraled into a disastrous debacle, leaving attendees stunned and trustees visibly frustrated. They lambasted Henyard for pushing through decisions without following established procedures, accusing her of creating an environment of dysfunction and recklessness. Tempers flared, voices were raised, and accusations filled the air, turning the meeting into a surreal spectacle. Writer and Burtmeyer's co-authors, David Janey, Kay Janey, and Steve Goldman, contributed the growing controversies and legal issues surrounding Henyard's leadership, with disputes over unpaid rent and accusations of misusing public funds adding to the tension. Despite the barrage of criticism from trustees and residents, Henyard remained defiant, clinging to her authority. Her decisions, often made unilaterally without consensus, only fueled public frustration, leading many to accuse her of authoritarianism. The meeting unfolded like a dramatic show, with the audience caught between outrage and a helpless fascination at the sight of a government in turmoil. Henyard's tenure has been marred by one scandal after another, tarnishing her reputation and threatening the future of the township. Allegations of lavish spending, including using public funds for extravagant events and personal luxuries, have painted a bleak picture of her leadership. Critics point to a pattern of financial irresponsibility, with township resources being drained to fund grandiose but impractical initiatives, worsening an already fragile financial situation. One of her most controversial proposals, a plan to refund property taxes, has been widely condemned. While Henyard presents it as a goodwill gesture to the community, critics argue it is a desperate attempt to regain public favor, with experts warning that the plan is financially unfeasible and could push the township further into crisis. As the meeting dragged on, frustration turned into despair. Attendees who had hoped for accountability began questioning how Thornton Township, once a model of community strength, had descended into such disarray. The mood shifted from anger to disbelief as residents expressed frustration with Henyard's inability to provide clear answers or propose solutions to pressing issues. Accusations of cronyism and autocratic rule added weight to the criticisms of her leadership. Trustees and community leaders voiced growing concern that Henyard's actions prioritized personal gain over the public's well-being, with one trustee publicly condemning her approach as reckless and authoritarian. The chaotic meeting highlighted deeper systemic issues that have plagued Henyard's leadership for years, from questionable expenditures on public credit cards to her refusal to pay rent. Allegations of misconduct have followed her at every turn. One particularly egregious example of financial mismanagement involved tens of thousands of dollars spent on luxury goods and events, funds that critics argue should have been used for urgent community needs. These incidents have become symbols of the broader narrative of neglect and self-interest that has defined her time in office. The growing mistrust between Henyard and the community was palpable. Many residents openly questioned how someone with such a contentious track record could still hold so much power. Calls for accountability echoed through the chamber, with some demanding an immediate change in leadership. Henyard's attempts to dismiss criticism and portray herself as a victim of political persecution fell on deaf ears. Her consistent refusal to acknowledge mistakes or offer meaningful change only further alienated those seeking clarity and reassurance. Critics argue that Henyard's leadership represents not just a failure of governance, but a failure of transparency and integrity in public office. Henyard's more than 600 retail locations across 375 countries. Tensions were high as the meeting began, with clear divisions among the trustees setting the stage for yet another contentious dispute under Supervisor Tiffany Henyard's leadership. Allegations of embezzling public funds and using her position for personal gain loomed over the proceedings, further eroding trust in her leadership. The growing discontent was palpable, hanging heavily in the air. At the center of the chaos was Trustee Caro, who attempted to participate remotely by phone, a practice that had previously been customary. However, Henyard swiftly denied the request, making a clear display of authority. Her rejection came with a pointed remark: "If you haven't been here, you should have come to the board meeting to handle the business." With those words, Henyard not only dismissed the trustee, but also set the tone for the entire meeting. Cooperation and compromise were clearly unwelcome. Instead of addressing pressing issues facing the township, the meeting became a platform for Henyard's autocratic leadership. Her actions reinforced long-standing criticisms, prioritizing power consolidation and silencing dissent over fostering productive dialogue. The meeting became a showcase of her controlling style, where constructive critique and meaningful discussion were stifled. Trustee Caro, who had hoped to engage in the decision-making process, was effectively sidelined, underscoring Henyard's refusal to entertain diverse perspectives or engage in good faith dialogue, an ongoing critique of her leadership. The fallout from Henyard's approach was immediate and evident. Trustees exchanged tense remarks, their frustration laid bare for all to see. Attendees, some angered by her high-handed behavior and others resigned to yet another dysfunctional display, watched as the meeting devolved into chaos. This incident epitomized the instability and conflict that have come to define Henyard's administration. Critics pointed to it as another example of Henyard prioritizing her ego and personal agenda over the needs of the township. Over time, this pattern has become increasingly clear, with Henyard accused of governing with petty disdain for dissenting voices, alienating not only critics but former allies who once supported her leadership. Her refusal to consider alternative viewpoints has only driven her already fragile administration further into discord. Henyard's insistence on dominating conversations rather than fostering transparent, inclusive governance has reinforced perceptions that her leadership is both divisive and ineffective. The consequences of her actions were evident during the meeting, as some trustees openly expressed frustration with her refusal to collaborate, while residents voiced their dissatisfaction. Their concerns were not just about Henyard's leadership style, but about the real-world impact of her decisions on the community. Issues such as allegations of financial misconduct and governance failures left many questioning her ability to lead the township toward stability and progress. Henyard's tendency to dismiss criticism and double down on her authority only deepened the fractures within her administration.
Appearance at the Dalton Village Board meeting this evening. That meeting was being held at the Park District building since Village Hall cannot legally accommodate the crowd.
You would think local leaders would put aside their differences and work together for the community's benefit, but that was not the case at the recent meeting. Tiffany Henyard, in charge, failed to keep the focus on the agenda, which included a proposal for a $2 million tax refund for Dalton residents. What should have been a simple matter quickly spiraled out of control. When Trustee Chris Gonzalez left the meeting, there was no quorum, no vote, and no tax refund. Clearly fed up with Henyard's antics, Gonzalez walked out, and Henyard tried to deflect blame, accusing Gonzalez and the other trustees of neglecting their duties. However, it's evident that under her leadership, no one can effectively govern, with the so-called super mayor at the center of dysfunction. In addition to the political chaos, Henyard is now facing eviction from her home. Despite earning a combined income of over $300,000 with her boyfriend Kamal Woods, who also works for the township, Henyard reportedly hasn't paid rent for months. Her landlord, Janetta Hall, who once considered Henyard a friend, is now seeking legal action to evict them. Hall claims Henyard owes more than $500,000 in back rent, and the legal process to remove them from the property is underway. The eviction issue is part of a broader federal investigation into Henyard's use of taxpayer money. Among the concerns being scrutinized is Henyard's use of a police security detail, which allegedly cost thousands of dollars and diverted officers from their regular duties. On top of that, Henyard has been accused of using her position to silence political opponents. In a recent Facebook Live rant, she vaguely accused unnamed individuals of engaging in power and money grabs, threatening that they would pay the price. This is a tactic often used by those who believe they are untouchable, but how long can Henyard continue this behavior? In the end, it's the people of Dalton who suffer the most. The township is over $5 million in debt, and critical services are being cut. For over a year, reports have been made about Henyard's questionable spending, and it's clear there is much more to the story. The question now is whether Henyard will be able to hold on to her position of power, or if the residents of Dalton will finally decide they've had enough. With the ongoing federal investigation, will Henyard face real consequences, or will she continue to evade responsibility? Despite Henyard's portrayal of herself as the super mayor, the real power lies with the people of Dalton, and it's up to them to decide the future of their town. Share your thoughts in the comments below.